I stood in the freshly painted nursery, my hands tracing the handcrafted wooden crib I'd secretly purchased. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. How my daughter Emma would gasp when I revealed what I'd done. How we'd arrange stuffed animals together in the corner. How she'd cry happy tears as I showed her the custom star projector for peaceful baby nights. How we'd sit in the rocking chair I'd restored from my own childhood, planning for the granddaughter I'd soon hold. But none of that would happen because Emma had texted me that morning. "Mom, I think it's better if you don't come to the shower." No explanation, no discussion, just those cold words illuminating my phone screen, shattering everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The room felt too quiet now, the soft yellow walls almost mocking me with their cheerfulness. I kept glancing at my watch, knowing the baby shower had already started across town without me. I'd wrapped a small gift anyway, a silver music box that played the lullaby I used to sing to Emma, and set it on the changing table, though I knew she might never see it. The silence pressed against me like a physical weight. I didn't cry, not immediately. I just stood there, one hand gripping the crib railing as if it might keep me from floating away into the emptiness that was opening inside me. I told myself maybe she'd call. Maybe there had been a mistake. Maybe her hormones were making her emotional. She was 7 months pregnant, after all. But deep down, I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. The distance between us had been growing for months, widening into a chasm I couldn't figure out how to cross. When the doorbell rang that afternoon, I almost didn't answer. I was still in the same flowery dress I'd bought specifically for the shower, though it now felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. I opened the door slowly, expecting a package delivery or perhaps a neighbor checking in. But there stood Mia, my daughter's college roommate and closest friend, still dressed in baby shower clothes, though her mascara was slightly smudged and she looked troubled. She didn't say hello. She said, "Patricia, can we talk?" Her voice was soft but urgent, and I felt something inside me both tighten and release at once. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories about family relationships and healing. Before all of this, before the silence, before the heartbreak, before the baby shower that happened without me, there was love. Real, undeniable love. The kind that shaped my entire world. That was my life with Emma. She was my only child, born after 3 devastating miscarriages when I'd nearly given up hope of ever becoming a mother. The day she arrived, tiny and perfect with a head full of dark hair, I made her a promise that I would always be there, that she would never know the childhood loneliness I had experienced. I raised Emma alone after her father walked out when she was just 4. Richard had found family life constraining, he said. He wanted to find himself. Apparently that journey didn't include being a father. The divorce was quick but painful, and suddenly I was a single mother with a preschooler and a mortgage I could barely afford on my elementary school teacher's salary. But I never let Emma feel the struggle. I worked extra tutoring jobs after school, saved every penny for her dance lessons, her science camp, her first laptop for high school. We became a team, Emma and I. On weekends, we'd make pancakes shaped like animals and build blanket forts in the living room. I never missed a dance recital or a science fair. I sat through endless tea parties with her stuffed animals, helped her through her first heartbreak at 16, stayed up all night helping her finish her college applications. I wanted her to have everything I didn't: security, confidence, opportunities. Maybe I overdid it sometimes, hovering when I should have stepped back. But my intentions were always rooted in love. I remember the joy that flooded through me when Emma called to tell me she was pregnant. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening. I was grading papers at my kitchen table when my phone lit up with her name. Her voice was trembling with excitement. "Mom," she said, You're going to be a grandma!" I cried, happy, overwhelmed tears. Emma and her husband Tyler had been trying for nearly 2 years, and I knew how much this baby meant to them. To all of us. I immediately began making plans. What I could teach this grandchild, the traditions I could pass down, the ways I could support Emma through pregnancy and motherhood. I ordered books on modern grandparenting, researched the safest, cribs and car seats, even started a college fund with a small deposit from my savings. Perhaps I was getting ahead of myself, but this grandchild represented a new chapter for our small family, a continuation of our story. Emma seemed to welcome my enthusiasm at first. We spoke almost daily during her first trimester. She texted me ultrasound photos with excited captions. We met for lunch every Wednesday, and I brought her ginger candies for her morning sickness and pregnancy books I'd carefully selected. When they decided not to find out the baby's gender, we speculated, together, laughing about family traits and making gentle bets on whether the baby would inherit Emma's curly hair or Tyler's dimples. The first time I noticed something shifting was during her 4th month. We were shopping for maternity clothes, and I picked up a floral dress I thought would look beautiful on her. "That's not really my style, Mom," she said, her voice carrying an edge I wasn't used to hearing. Besides, Melissa already helped me order some things online. Melissa was Tyler's mother, a sophisticated, wealthy woman with a knack for making me feel slightly inadequate whenever we met at family gatherings. I put the dress back, smiling to hide my hurt. "Of course," I said. "I'm sure what you ordered is lovely." It seemed small at the time, just a daughter asserting her own taste. But looking back, I realize it was the first sign of Emma pulling away, the first thread unraveling in the tapestry of our relationship. I didn't want to see it then. I was too excited about becoming a grandmother, too certain that this baby would bring us even closer together. We had always been honest with each other, Emma and I. Even during her rebellious teenage years when she dyed her hair purple and stayed out past curfew, we managed to talk through our disagreements. She told me once, at 17, that she appreciated how I never made her feel bad for making mistakes. "You always listen first," she said. "Not like my friends' parents who just lecture." I had held on to that compliment through the difficult years, that validation that despite my imperfections, I was doing something right as a mother. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But now, as her pregnancy progressed, our conversations became increasingly superficial. She stopped sharing her worries or excitements. When I asked about her prenatal appointments, she gave vague answers. "Everything's fine," or "The doctor says we're right on track." When I offered to accompany her to her 20-week ultrasound, she told me Tyler was taking the day off work. I tried not to feel hurt. Of course, her husband should be there. But I remembered how my own mother had been absent during my pregnancy with Emma, how I had wished for maternal guidance and support. Looking back, I can see how I might have been too eager, too involved. I suggested weekly Lamaze classes we could attend together. I forwarded articles about breastfeeding and sleep training. I started knitting a baby blanket in neutral colors, texting her progress photos every few days. Was I overwhelming her? Probably. But I didn't know how else to show my love, my excitement, my desire to be part of this journey. The real turning point came when Emma and Tyler invited me to dinner at their home, a charming 2-bedroom in a neighborhood they could only afford because Tyler's parents had helped with the down payment. I arrived with a small gift, a vintage copy of Goodnight Moon that I'd found at a local bookstore. Emma opened it with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We need to talk about something, Mom," she said, as Tyler poured water into elegant glasses that had been a wedding. "Gift from his family? We've been thinking about the nursery." My heart leapt. This was a topic I was eager to discuss. I had been collecting ideas, creating a mental vision board of perfect nursery designs. "I've been thinking about it too," I said eagerly. I saw some beautiful gender-neutral themes online. What are you leaning toward? Woodland creatures? Stars and moons? I know a wonderful mural artist who— Mom, Emma interrupted, her voice firm. We've already decided. Melissa has hired an interior designer who specializes in nurseries. They're starting next week. The words landed like stones in still water, ripples of hurt spreading through my chest. Oh, I managed, setting down my fork. That's wonderful. Very generous of her. Tyler was looking uncomfortable, studying his plate with unusual intensity. The thing is, Emma continued, not quite meeting my eyes, we want the nursery to be a surprise for everyone. So we're keeping it private until after the baby comes. No pictures, no visits to that room. The designer says it helps keep the energy pure and intentional. I nodded slowly, trying to understand what she was really saying. So, Melissa won't see it either, despite paying for the designer? A flicker of something, guilt, perhaps, crossed Emma's face. Well, she's coordinating with the designer, so she'll be involved in the process, but she understands it's our special space. The unspoken message was clear. Melissa was welcome in this sacred space. I was not. I took a sip of water, willing, my voice to remain steady. I understand, I said, though I didn't. Not really. What had happened to the daughter who once called me her best friend? Who had told me when she bought her first home that she couldn't wait for me to help decorate the nursery someday? Throughout dinner, Emma and Tyler talked about their plans, the organic paint they'd selected, the sustainable furniture being custom-made. Each detail was another small wound. I had been dreaming of helping create this space, of passing down the rocking chair my father had made when Emma was born, of spending weekends painting walls and assembling furniture together. Instead, I was being politely but firmly shut out. When I left that night, Emma hugged me briefly at the door. I know you're excited about the baby, she said, her tone softening slightly. But we need to do this our way. I hope you can respect that. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and walked to my car with my back straight and my eyes dry. It wasn't until I was driving home that the tears came, blurring the streetlights into hazy stars. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my small house, the one I'd kept after the divorce because Emma had loved the backyard tree swing. I found myself in the spare bedroom, which had once been hers. The walls were still the pale green she'd chosen as a teenager, though she'd taken most of her possessions when she moved out for college. I sat on the edge of the twin bed, running my hand over the quilt my grandmother had made. What had I done wrong? When had I become someone my daughter needed to distance herself from? I replayed our recent interactions, searching for clues. Had I been too opinionated? Too old-fashioned in my ideas about baby care? Was it simply that Melissa, with her designer clothes and country club membership, was the grandmother Emma wanted her child to have? The kind that could provide opportunities and connections I never could? The questions circled like restless birds, keeping me awake until dawn crept through the blinds. By morning, I had made a decision. If Emma wanted space, I would give it to her. I wouldn't call unless she called first. I wouldn't send daily texts or baby articles. I would step back and let her come to me when she was ready. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Harder than single motherhood, harder than struggling to make ends meet all those years. But I would do it, because I loved her. Because sometimes love means letting go. For 2 weeks, I kept my promise. To myself. I didn't call. I didn't text except to respond when Emma initiated contact, which was rarely. I threw myself into end-of-year activities at school, helping my second graders prepare for their graduation to third grade. I joined a book club I'd been putting off for years. I kept busy, externally. But internally, I was adrift, unmoored from the relationship that had defined my adult life. Then, on a rainy Saturday, I was sorting through old photo albums when I found it. The nursery design Emma had drawn when she was 11 years old. It was part of a My Future project for school, complete with detailed colored pencil illustrations. She had designed a whimsical space filled with stars and clouds, a rocking chair by the window, bookshelves overflowing with stories, and a message written in her careful, childish script. "This is where I will rock my baby someday, just like my mom did for me." Something clicked into place as I stared at that drawing. Not a plan, exactly, but a possibility. I couldn't be part of the official nursery design, but perhaps I could create something else, something that honored both who Emma had been and who she was becoming. I carefully set the drawing aside and began to research. The next day, I visited a small space I owned, a converted garage apartment behind my house that I occasionally rented to graduate students for extra income. It was vacant now, waiting for a summer tenant. The space was modest but charming, a studio with good natural light and a small bathroom. I stood in the center, turning slowly, and I could see it. A nursery. Not the one in Emma's home, not a replacement, but a special place for when my grandchild visited me. A grandmother's nursery, filled with love and memories. I didn't tell Emma what I was doing. Part of me feared another rejection, but mostly I wanted it to be a surprise, a gift without expectations. I hired a local handyman to help with the structural changes, installing proper insulation, updating the electrical outlets with safety covers, adding a small efficiency kitchenette for preparing bottles. I took 2 weeks of personal leave from school to focus on the transformation. Every decision was made with love and memories in mind. I found the original rocking chair my father had made, stored in the attic, and refinished it myself, sanding away decades of wear to reveal the beautiful maple underneath. I commissioned a local artist to paint a mural of a night sky across one wall, with constellations that matched the ones visible on the night Emma was born. I installed bookshelves and filled them with classics from Emma's childhood. Good Night, Moon, Where the Wild Things Are, The Velveteen Rabbit, alongside newer titles I'd carefully researched. I spent evenings sewing curtains from fabric patterned with silver stars, and weekends hunting through antique stores for the perfect dresser to convert into a changing table. I found a beautiful vintage crib that met modern safety standards, painted it a soft white, and outfitted it with organic bedding in gentle yellows and greens. Every item was chosen to create a space that was both magical and practical, a room where my grandchild could feel completely safe and loved. As the nursery took shape, I felt a healing beginning within me as well. The hurt of Emma's distance was still there, but it was tempered now by purpose, by the act of creating something from love without expectation of return. I wasn't doing this to win Emma back or to compete with Melissa's designer nursery. I was doing it because I was going to be a grandmother, and this was how I expressed my joy. The final touch was a custom mobile I commissioned from a local craftsperson, delicate wooden stars and clouds that spun gently above the crib, playing the lullaby I used to sing to Emma. When it was installed, I stood in the center of the completed space and felt, for the first time in weeks, a sense of peace. Whether Emma ever saw this room or not, I had created it from my heart. That would have to be enough. It was 3 days after I finished the nursery that Emma texted me about the baby shower. "Melissa and Tyler's sisters are hosting it next Saturday. At 2. I thought you should know." Not an invitation, just information, delivered with the emotional equivalent of a shrug. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Thank you for letting me know. I hope it's wonderful." I didn't ask if I was invited. I didn't want to put her in the position of having to explicitly exclude me. But the next morning, when I woke to another text, "Mom, I think it's better if you don't come to the shower." The pain was still fresh and sharp. No explanation, no softening, just exclusion, plain and simple. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone clutched in my hand, and finally allowed myself to cry. deep, body-shaking sobs that had been building for months. When I could breathe again, I washed my face, made a cup of tea, and walked out to the converted garage. I sat in the rocking chair, surrounded by all the love I'd poured into this space, and tried to make sense of how my relationship with my daughter had disintegrated so completely. Had I been too controlling? Too smothering? Had the years of it being just us created an unhealthy dependence that Emma was now breaking? Or was it simpler than that? Was I simply being replaced by Melissa, with her interior designers and country club connections? Was I a reminder of the struggling single mother years that Emma perhaps wanted to leave behind as she entered this new phase of life with her financially comfortable in-laws? I didn't have answers, only questions that echoed in the quiet nursery. But sitting there, rocking gently in the chair that had held 3 generations of my family, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight Emma's choice. I wouldn't make her feel guilty. I wouldn't crash the shower or send a passive-aggressive gift. I would respect her boundaries as painful as they were, and I would wait, not with bitter resentment, but with an open heart. Because that's what mothers do. We wait. We hope. We love, even when it hurts. The day of the baby shower, I put on the flowery dress I'd bought for the occasion, a small act of defiance against despair, and drove to the nursery supply store 1 town over. If I couldn't celebrate with Emma, I could at least complete the space I'd created with a few final touches. I selected a state-of-the-art baby monitor, additional crib sheets, a specially designed support pillow for nursing mothers. Practical items for a grandchild I wasn't sure I'd be allowed to know. When I returned home, the house felt empty in a way it never had before. I changed out of my dress into comfortable clothes and made myself a cup of tea. Then I walked out to the converted garage and stood in the doorway of the nursery I'd created, taking in every detail. The star-patterned rug, the cloud-shaped nightlight, the collection of soft, stuffed animals arranged in the reading corner. It was beautiful. It was filled with love. And it might never be used for its intended purpose. That's when the doorbell rang, cutting through my thoughts like a sudden alarm. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a wild moment, I wondered if it might be Emma, having changed her mind about the shower. But I knew better than to indulge in that fantasy. It was probably a package delivery, or perhaps a neighbor returning a borrowed garden tool. I opened the front door slowly, still distracted by thoughts of empty nurseries and missed celebrations. And there stood Mia, looking slightly out of breath as if she'd rushed over. She was dressed in a pretty blue dress, her dark hair pulled back with a floral clip that matched the baby shower theme I'd seen mentioned in Emma's social media posts. "Patricia," she said, her voice both hesitant and determined. "I left the shower early. I needed to talk to you." She glanced over her shoulder, as if worried someone might see her on my porch. "Can I come in? It's important." I stepped back, opening the door wider. "Of course," I said, my heart beginning to race. "Is everything okay? Is Emma all right?" Mia stepped inside, her expression troubled. "Emma's fine. Physically, anyway." She set her purse down on the entry table with deliberate care. But things, at the shower, they don't feel right. And I couldn't just sit there anymore without talking to you. I led Mia into the living room, my mind racing with possibilities. What could be happening at the shower that would drive Emma's best friend to leave early and come straight to me? Mia perched on the edge of the sofa, smoothing her dress nervously. "I've known Emma since freshman year of college," she began, twisting the friendship bracelet on her wrist, the one Emma had made for her during a beach trip years ago. "We've been through everything together. Her first serious breakup, my dad's cancer scare, moving into our first apartment that had those terrible roaches we named after our professors." A small smile flickered across her face before fading. "I thought I knew her better than anyone, but lately, she's changed, Patricia. And today at the shower, I couldn't recognize her anymore." I sank into the armchair across from her, hands clasped tightly in my lap. Changed how? Mia looked down, choosing her words carefully. The shower is being held at Melissa's country club. Everything is extravagant. Custom monogrammed favors, a 5-tier cake, a professional photographer documenting every moment. It's beautiful, but it doesn't feel like Emma. She's always been so down to earth, so authentic. I nodded, remembering how Emma had insisted on homemade decorations for her wedding, how she'd fought with Tyler about the unnecessary expense of hiring a band when a carefully curated playlist would do just fine. But that's not why I left, Mia continued. I could handle the over-the-top decorations and Melissa's society friends asking if Emma plans to keep her figure after the baby. Her voice hardened. What I couldn't handle was how they were talking about you. My breath caught. About me? Mia met my eyes directly now. They've been making you into some kind of villain, Patricia. Melissa started it, making these little comments about how you were smothering Emma with advice, how you were trying to take over the nursery planning. But then Emma, she hesitated. Please, I whispered. I need to know. Emma joined in. She told everyone you've been overwhelming her throughout the pregnancy, that you can't accept that she's not a little girl anymore. She showed them text messages you'd sent with baby name suggestions and nursery ideas, and they were all laughing, like you were this pathetic, clingy mother who couldn't let go. Mia's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't just a passing comment. Patricia. It became the entertainment. My mom said this ridiculous thing. My mom thinks she knows everything about babies even though her information is 30 years old. Each word was like a physical blow. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but I could feel something crumbling inside me. I see, I managed. The worst part was when Melissa started talking about the nursery, how her designer is creating this one-of-a-kind space that's going to be featured in some home magazine. She kept saying how fortunate Emma is to have a proper mother figure, to guide her through motherhood, someone with standards and connections. Mia's voice had taken on an edge of anger now, and Emma just sat there nodding and smiling, like she agreed with every word. I stood abruptly, walking to the window to hide my face. Outside, spring flowers were blooming in my small garden. The daffodils Emma and I had planted together years ago, returning faithfully each year despite neglect. Why are you telling me this, Mia? I heard her stand, her voice closer now. Because it's wrong. Because the Emma I know would never treat her mother this way. Because I can't understand how she could forget everything you sacrificed for her. She paused. And because I saw your name crossed off the shower guest list when I arrived. It had uninvited written next to it in Melissa's handwriting. So it had been Melissa's idea, not Emma's. Somehow that hurt even more, that my daughter had allowed her mother-in-law to dictate our relationship. I turned back to face Mia, working to keep my voice steady. Thank you for telling me. But I don't want you to jeopardize your friendship with Emma. She needs supportive friends right now. Mia's expression softened. You're still defending her, even after how she's treated you. I'm her mother, I said simply. That doesn't change, even when things are difficult between us. Mia reached for her purse, then hesitated. There's something else. I overheard Tyler and Emma arguing in the hallway. He was upset that you weren't there. He said, Your mom deserves better than this, Emma. She told him to drop it, that it was complicated. But I could tell he was really bothered by your absence. A small flicker of warmth spread through my chest. At least someone had noticed. The empty chair where I should have been sitting. Tyler's a good man, I said. I've always thought so. Mia nodded. He is, and I think he feels caught in the middle. She glanced at her watch. I should get back before they notice I've been gone too long. I told them I had a work emergency to handle. She reached out and squeezed my hand. I just couldn't sit there anymore, watching them erase you from Emma's life. Not when I know how much you love her. After Mia left, I stood in my living room for a long time, too numb to cry, too restless to sit. The grandfather clock in the corner, a wedding gift from my parents, ticked steadily, marking minutes that felt disconnected from time. Finally, I grabbed my keys and walked outside to the converted garage. I needed to be in the nursery I'd created, surrounded by the tangible evidence of my love for a grandchild I might never be allowed to know. I sat in the rocking chair, running my fingers over the smooth wooden arms my father had carved. 3 generations of hands had touched this chair, my father's as he built it, mine as I rocked Emma, and someday perhaps my grandchild's as they learned to climb. Time flowing forward, unbroken, despite the ruptures in our human relationships. As twilight deepened outside the windows, I found myself speaking aloud in the empty room. "I don't know if you'll ever sleep in this crib," I said, standing to smooth the organic cotton sheets. "I don't know if you'll ever hear the stories in these books or play with these toys, but I want you to know that your grandmother loved you before she ever met you, that she created this space with every ounce of love in her heart, that you have always been wanted, not just by your parents, but by me." The words hung in the quiet room, a promise to an unborn child, a declaration of love that transcended the painful present. As I spoke, something shifted inside me. Not healing exactly, but a crack in the shell of hurt that had enclosed my heart. There was room suddenly for something beyond pain, for resolve, for clarity. I returned to the house and did something I'd been avoiding. I opened my laptop and looked at Emma's social media. There they were, dozens of photos from the baby. Shower I hadn't been allowed to attend, Emma in a flowing maternity dress, hand resting on her rounded belly. Melissa beside her, elegant in designer clothes, arranging gifts with practiced precision. Tyler looking slightly uncomfortable in the background of most shots. Everything perfect, curated, beautiful, and utterly hollow. I clicked through the images, noting the elaborate decorations, the mountain of expensive gifts, the professional cake that must have cost hundreds. But what struck me most was Emma's expression in every photo. A smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, a tension around her mouth that probably no one else would notice. But I noticed. I had studied that face since the moment she was born. I knew every expression, every micro-movement, and I recognized what I was seeing now. My daughter was unhappy. Not dissatisfied with the party. It was objectively stunning. But unhappy in a deeper way. A soul-level way that all the designer nursery furniture in the world couldn't fix. The realization didn't bring me satisfaction. It brought me sorrow and a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever was happening with Emma went beyond her relationship with me. Something was wrong in her world, and despite everything, I wanted to help. But how could I help someone who had shut me out so completely? Who had allowed me to be mocked and excluded? Who had rewritten our shared history to cast me as the villain? I closed the laptop, no closer to answers than before Mia's visit. That night, I dreamed of Emma as a child. She was about 6, her hair in uneven pigtails she'd insisted on doing herself, wearing the firefighter costume she'd refused to take off for an entire month. In the dream, she was building a tower of blocks, her small face intense with concentration. When the tower inevitably collapsed, she looked up at me with determination rather than frustration. "It's okay, Mommy," Dream Emma said. "We can build it again. Better this time." I woke with tears on my face, but a strange sense of clarity. We could build it again. Not the same relationship we'd had before. That was gone. But perhaps something new, something that honored both who we had been to each other and who we were becoming. If Emma would let me try. The following morning, I called in sick to school for the first time in years. I couldn't face 28. Second graders with my heart so raw, my thoughts so scattered. Instead, I made a pot of strong coffee and sat at my kitchen table with a notebook, pen in hand. I began writing down every interaction with Emma since she'd announced her pregnancy, searching for patterns, for clues I might have missed. There had been subtle shifts that I'd ignored at the time. Emma mentioning Melissa's advice on prenatal vitamins when I'd suggested a brand I'd trusted. Emma declining my offer to host a small family dinner to celebrate the pregnancy announcement. Emma changing the subject when I asked about doctor's appointments or birthing plans. And then the larger rejections, being excluded from nursery, planning, from the baby shower, from her life. What was the connecting thread? Was it simply that I'd been replaced by Melissa, with her wealth and social status? Was Emma embarrassed by my modest home, my public school teacher's salary, my practical approach to life? Had she outgrown me, moved into a world where I no longer belonged? I thought of Tyler's comment overhead by Mia. "Your mom deserves better than this." That suggested he, at least, recognized the injustice of my exclusion, which meant Emma did, too, on some level. This wasn't thoughtlessness, it was deliberate. But why? The answer came to me suddenly, clear as daylight. Fear. Emma was afraid. Not of me exactly, but of what I represented. I was the living reminder of her humble beginnings, of the years when we'd clipped coupons and shopped at thrift stores. I was the single mother who'd shown her that women could be strong and independent, a message that perhaps conflicted with the country club life she was entering through Melissa and Tyler's family. More than that, I represented a type of mothering that was hands-on, emotionally involved, sometimes imperfect, but always deeply present. Perhaps that scared her as she faced becoming a mother herself. Perhaps she feared she couldn't live up to that standard. Or perhaps she feared being consumed by motherhood as I had sometimes been. The realization didn't erase the hurt, but it helped me understand. Emma wasn't rejecting me because I'd failed her. She was distancing herself because she was grappling with her own fears about motherhood, identity, and belonging. In pushing me away, she was trying to resolve something inside herself. Understanding this didn't show me a clear path forward, but it did ease some of the bewilderment I'd been carrying. It wasn't about designer nurseries or social status, not really. It was about Emma's internal journey toward motherhood, complicated by insecurities I hadn't realized she carried. As I sat with this new understanding, my phone buzzed with a text. I expected it to be from school, perhaps checking if I needed a substitute for tomorrow as well. Instead, I saw Tyler's name on the screen. My heart jumped. In our 12 years of knowing each other, Tyler had never texted me independently of Emma. "Patricia, is there any chance we could meet for coffee? Tomorrow? Just us. I need to talk to you about something important." I stared at the message, uncertainty warring with hope. Was this a peace offering? A warning of some new exclusion to come? Whatever it was, I couldn't ignore it. "Of course," I replied. "The cafe on Maple at 10? His response came quickly. "Perfect, thank you." That evening, I found myself drawn back to the nursery in the converted garage. I sat in the rocking chair, watching the last light fade from the sky through the star-patterned curtains. The room was so peaceful, so filled with love and anticipation. I tried to imagine my grandchild here, sleeping peacefully in the crib while I kept watch from this chair. Would I ever experience that reality? I didn't cry. I'd moved beyond tears, to a quieter, more resolved place. Whatever happened next, whether Emma welcomed me back into her life or continued to shut me out, I would survive it. I would continue to love her and her child, whether from up close or from a distance. That love was unconditional, unchangeable, even when it wasn't reciprocated in the ways I longed for. For the first time in weeks, I slept deeply that night, without dreams or restlessness. I woke feeling something I hadn't expected: calm. Not happiness, not resolution, but a steadiness that had been absent since Emma's rejection began. Whatever Tyler wanted to discuss, I would face it with dignity and open-heartedness. The cafe on Maple was quiet when I arrived the next morning. Just a few retirees lingering over late breakfasts and students with laptops occupying corner tables. I chose a booth by the window, ordered a black coffee, and waited, working to keep my hands steady and my mind open. Tyler arrived precisely at 10, looking both determined and uncomfortable. He was a kind man, thoughtful, and somewhat quiet. The perfect counterbalance to Emma's more exuberant personality. I'd always liked him and had been grateful that my daughter had found a partner who truly valued her. "Patricia," he said, sliding into the booth opposite me. "Thank you for meeting me. I know things have been difficult lately." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. He ordered coffee from the passing waitress, then turned his full attention to me. "I want to start by saying I'm sorry," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I should have said something sooner about how you've been treated. It's not right, and I've been a coward for not standing up to Emma and my mother." The simple acknowledgement of wrongdoing made my throat tighten, unexpectedly. After months of feeling gaslit about my own exclusion, hearing someone recognize it was powerfully validating. "Thank you for saying that," I managed. "But I don't want to put you in the middle of whatever is happening with Emma and me. That's not fair to you." Tyler shook his head firmly. "I'm already in the middle, Patricia, and I can't keep watching this happen without saying something." He took a deep breath. "Emma isn't herself lately. I don't know if it's pregnancy hormones or my mother's influence or something else entirely, but the woman who's been planning this baby shower, excluding you from our lives, that's not the Emma I married." I wrapped my hands around my coffee mug, absorbing his words. "She's going through a lot of changes right now. Becoming a mother is transformative. It reshapes your identity in ways you can't anticipate." Tyler studied me with newfound respect. "Even now, you're defending her, after everything." He shook his head slightly. "My mother means well, but she can be overwhelming. Since we announced the pregnancy, she's been inserting herself into every decision, every plan. The nursery, the shower, the birth plan. She has opinions about everything. And for some reason, Emma's been going along with it all, even when I know it's not what she really wants." "What makes you think it's not what she wants?" I asked carefully. "Because I know my wife," he said simply. "The Emma I know wouldn't want a nursery that looks like it belongs in a magazine but has no soul. She wouldn't want a baby shower with my mother's country club friends who barely know her. And she certainly wouldn't want to cut you out of our lives." He hesitated. "Last night, after everyone left, I found her crying in the nursery. When I asked what was wrong, she just said she was tired. But I don't think that's it." I absorbed this information silently, my heart aching for my daughter, even as it still smarted from her rejection. "Why are you telling me this, Tyler?" He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Because I think Emma needs you, even if she won't admit it. She's lost herself somehow in all of this, trying to fit into my family's world, trying to be the kind of mother she thinks she's supposed to be, but I'm worried about her, about the baby, about all of us." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope, sliding it across the table. "This is a key to our house. I want you to come over tomorrow at noon. Emma will be at a prenatal yoga class with my sister. I want to show you something." I stared at the envelope without touching it. I don't think surprising Emma is the right approach. If she doesn't want me in your home, it's not about surprising her, Tyler interrupted. It's about showing you what's really going on. After that, we can figure out the right way to approach her together. His eyes held mine, pleading. Please, Patricia. I wouldn't ask if I didn't think it was important. After a long moment, I took the envelope, slipping it into my purse. "Okay," I said quietly. "Tomorrow at noon." The rest of our conversation was brief and somewhat stilted, both of us aware of the strangeness of our alliance, of the invisible presence of Emma between us. When we parted, Tyler hugged me awkwardly but sincerely. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not giving up on her." The next day, I stood on Emma and Tyler's front porch precisely at noon, key in hand, heart hammering. This felt wrong, entering my daughter's home without her knowledge or permission. But Tyler's concern had been genuine, and my own worry for Emma outweighed my discomfort with the subterfuge. The house was quiet when I entered, sunlight streaming through the large windows. That had been one of the main selling points when they'd purchased the home 2 years earlier. Everything was immaculate. Too immaculate for a house with expectant parents, where nesting usually created some measure of chaos. It looked like a model home, designed to impress rather than to be lived in. Tyler emerged from the hallway, greeting me with a nod. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice hushed despite our being alone. "I want to show you the nursery first." I followed him down the hallway, past framed photos of Emma and Tyler's wedding, their honeymoon in Hawaii, family gatherings where I recognized Tyler's relatives but saw myself conspicuously absent. We stopped at a closed door decorated with an elaborate personalized sign, "Baby Calloway's Dreamland." "Melissa's designer finished last week," Tyler explained, turning the crystal doorknob. "It's exactly what my mother wanted." The room that was revealed took my breath away. Not with its beauty, though it was objectively stunning, but with its utter lack of warmth. Everything was pristine, coordinated in shades of gray and white that looked elegant but sterile. The crib was an imported European design that probably cost more than my monthly salary. The changing table matched, topped with organizers containing perfectly arranged designer baby clothes, still with tags attached. A crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting prismatic light across walls covered in hand-painted clouds. It was, without question, a showcase rather than a sanctuary. There were no books, no stuffed animals, none of the small touches that made a nursery feel like a place where a baby would be loved rather than displayed. "It's very sophisticated," I managed, trying to find something positive to say. Tyler shook his head. "It's cold. It's a room designed to impress visitors, not nurture a child." He ran a hand over the crib railing. "Emma hates it. She hasn't said so directly, but I can tell. She never comes in here willingly. When my mother brings her in to show off some new addition, she just nods and smiles that smile that doesn't reach her eyes." My heart ached, thinking of Emma trapped in a nursery that didn't reflect her heart, her vision for motherhood. "Why? Didn't she say something? Stand up to Melissa?" Tyler sighed heavily. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. It's like she's afraid to disappoint my mother, to not fit into the life my family leads." He gestured for me to follow him. "But that's not what I really wanted to show you." We left the nursery, continuing down the hallway to a door I knew led to the small home office Emma and Tyler shared. Inside, the room had been divided into clear territories, Tyler's orderly desk on one side, Emma's more creative chaos on the other. But it was what was taped to the wall above Emma's desk that caught my attention. Dozens of nursery designs torn from magazines and printed from websites, all showing rooms that were warm, whimsical, filled with color and character. Rooms nothing like the sterile showcase we'd just seen. "She's been collecting these for months," Tyler said softly. "Since before we told anyone about the pregnancy. This is what she wanted, Patricia. Not that designer showcase." I stepped closer, examining the images. They featured elements I recognized immediately as Emma: colorful bookshelves, nature themes, spaces that invited imagination and comfort. One design in particular was circled repeatedly in red pen, a nursery with star-patterned walls, filled with books and vintage toys. A rocking chair sat by the window, and handmade mobiles hung above a simple wooden crib. My breath caught. It was nearly identical to the nursery I'd created in my converted garage. "There's more," Tyler said, moving to Emma's desk drawer. He hesitated, then opened it to reveal a sketchbook. "I found this when I was looking for a stamp last week. I shouldn't have looked through it, but once I started..." He handed it to me with gentle reverence. I opened the sketchbook with trembling hands. Page after page was filled with Emma's drawings. She'd inherited my father's artistic talent, though she rarely used it anymore. These weren't casual doodles. They were detailed renderings of a nursery, carefully annotated, with notes. "Grandma's rocking chair here. Mom's baby blanket for the crib. Bookshelf for all the stories Mom used to read to me." On the final page, Emma had written a list titled, "Things I Want My Baby to Have from My Childhood." Every item connected back to me, to our life together. Mom's homemade lullabies, weekend pancake traditions, the security of knowing they're deeply loved, like Mom always made me feel. Tears blurred my vision as I gently closed the sketchbook. "I don't understand," I whispered. "If this is what she wants, why has she been pushing me away? Why is she letting Melissa create a nursery she doesn't even like?" Tyler took the sketchbook from my hands, returning it carefully to the drawer. "That's what I've been trying to figure out. Last night, after I found her crying, she finally said something that might explain it." He met my eyes directly. "She said, 'I don't know how to be a mother like you without becoming you, Mom, and I'm scared of disappearing completely.'" The words hit me with physical force. Emma wasn't rejecting me or our past. She was afraid of being consumed by motherhood, of losing her own identity in the process. Something she'd seen happen to me as a single mother with limited resources and support. "She's pushing me away because she's afraid of becoming me," I said softly, the realization both painful and clarifying. "I think so," Tyler nodded. "And my mother has been using that fear, intentionally or not, to step into the void, offering a different model of motherhood, one that's more detached, more focused on appearances than emotional connection." He sighed. "The problem is, that's not Emma. That's never been Emma. And I'm watching her twist herself into knots, trying to be someone she's not." I left Emma and Tyler's house with my thoughts spinning like autumn leaves in a storm. The revelation that Emma feared becoming me, that she was rejecting not my love, but the consuming nature of my motherhood, shifted everything. It wasn't about designer nurseries or social status. It was about identity, about the terror of losing yourself in the ocean of motherhood. As I drove home, memories washed over me. The night classes I'd abandoned when Emma got scarlet fever. At age 4. The promotion I'd declined because it would have meant traveling overnight twice a month. The dating life I'd never fully developed because Emma's needs always came first. I had made these sacrifices willingly, joyfully even. But I suddenly saw them through my daughter's eyes, not as badges of maternal devotion, but as cautionary tales. When I arrived home, I didn't go inside immediately. Instead, I walked to the converted garage and stood in the doorway of the nursery I'd created. It was beautiful, filled with love and thoughtfulness. But I realized now that it represented something complicated to Emma. Both the nurturing she wanted to provide her child and the self-sacrifice she feared. I sat in the rocking chair, letting my hand run over the smooth wooden arms, and made a decision. I couldn't change the past, couldn't rewrite the story of my motherhood with its all-consuming focus on Emma. But I could show her a different future, a different possibility. I could help her see that loving her child completely didn't have to mean disappearing completely. The path forward wasn't clear, but I knew the first step. I needed to reconnect with the woman I'd been before motherhood consumed me. Not to reject being Emma's mother. That identity was woven into my soul. but to expand beyond it, to show Emma that motherhood could be one facet of a multidimensional life rather than its entirety. The following morning, I made 2 phone calls that changed everything. The first was to Dr. Eleanor Prentice, the principal at my elementary school. "Eleanor?" I said when she answered. "I'd like to discuss taking on the curriculum development role you offered last year, if it's still available." It was a position I'd declined when it was first proposed, citing my commitment to classroom teaching. The truth was, I'd been afraid of stepping into administrative work, afraid of the additional responsibility, afraid of change. But the role would use my decades of teaching experience to shape education at a broader level, and the challenge suddenly felt invigorating rather than intimidating. "Are you serious, Patricia?" Eleanor's surprise was evident. "I'd given up hope you'd consider it. But yes, the position is still open, and frankly, you're still my first choice." We scheduled a meeting for the following week to discuss details. When I hung up, I felt a flutter of excitement I hadn't experienced in years, the thrill of professional growth, of stretching beyond comfortable boundaries. The second call was more personal and far more difficult. I dialed a number I hadn't called in over a decade, holding my breath as it rang. "Robert Dawson speaking." My ex-husband's voice was deeper than I remembered, but still instantly recognizable. "Robert, it's Patricia," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." The silence stretched for several seconds before he responded. "Patricia, this is unexpected. Is everything all right? Is Emma okay?" "Emma's fine," I assured him quickly. "Well, physically fine at least. She's expecting a baby in about 2 months." "I know," he said, surprising me. "She reached out a few months ago. We've had lunch a couple of times. I assumed she told you." Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Emma had been reconnecting with her father while distancing herself from me, not to hurt me, I realized, but to understand the other half of her identity before becoming a parent herself. "She didn't mention it," I said, "but I'm glad she found you. That's actually related to why I'm calling. Robert, I need your perspective on something important." Over the next 30 minutes, I explained the situation: Emma's pregnancy, her fear of losing herself in motherhood, her rejection of my involvement. I didn't minimize my hurt, but I didn't assign blame either. I simply presented the facts as I understood them. When I finished, Robert was quiet for a long moment. "She sees you as the all-sacrificing mother," he finally said. "The woman who gave up everything for her child, and that terrifies her." "Yes," I agreed. "And she's not entirely wrong about how all-consuming my motherhood was." "Patricia," Robert's voice softened, "you were an incredible mother. But you and I both know you lost yourself in it. After I left, and I'm not proud of how I handled that, you wrapped your entire identity around being Emma's mother. Your whole world narrowed to that single role." The truth of his words stung, but I didn't deny them. "That's what I'm calling about, actually. I need to know. What was I like before? Before Emma? Before our marriage, even? Who was I, Robert? I've forgotten, and I need to remember." His surprised laugh carried through the phone. "You're asking me to remind you who you were before motherhood changed you?" "Yes," I said simply, "because that woman is still inside me somewhere. And I need to find her again, not just for Emma's sake, but for my own." Robert's voice warmed with memory. "You were fearless, Patricia. That's what drew me to you in the first place. You had this boundless curiosity about everything. You were halfway through your teaching degree, but you were also taking night classes in astronomy because you wanted to learn about the stars. You painted, not well, if I'm being honest, but with such enthusiasm it didn't matter." I closed my eyes, trying to conjure this version of myself, the young woman who'd fallen in love with a charming geology student, who'd dreamed of teaching but also of traveling, writing, exploring. The woman who'd had a life planned beyond motherhood. You had that ridiculous yellow bicycle, Robert continued, warming to his subject now. You rode it everywhere, even in the rain. And you were writing a children's book. About a girl who could talk to trees, I think? You used to read me chapters while we had picnics in the park. The memory surfaced suddenly. The half-finished manuscript in a box somewhere in my attic. Abandoned when pregnancy fatigue and then new motherhood had overtaken my creative energy. I'd never gone back to it, never even thought about it in years. Thank you, I said softly, for helping me remember. Why now? Robert asked. After all these years, why are you looking back to who you were before? Because Emma needs to see that I'm more than just her mother, I explained. She needs to know that motherhood doesn't have to erase everything else you are or want to be. And honestly, I need to know that too. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh notebook making a list titled Reclaiming Patricia. I wrote down everything I could remember about my pre-motherhood dreams, interests, and personality traits: astronomy, writing children's books, painting, badly but joyfully, bicycle riding, travel aspirations, political activism. The list grew, surprising me with its length and diversity. Then I made a second list: things I can reclaim now. Some dreams were no longer relevant or appealing, but others sparked immediate interest. I could take an astronomy class at the community college. I could unearth my old manuscript and see if there was anything worth salvaging. I could buy a bicycle and start riding again. Not the unsafe fixed-gear model of my youth, but something appropriate for a woman in her 50s with bad knees but good intentions. This wasn't about erasing my identity as Emma's mother or diminishing the joy that role had brought me. It was about expanding beyond it, about showing both Emma and myself that motherhood could be integrated into a rich, multifaceted life rather than subsuming everything else. Over the next 2 weeks, I put my plan into action. I registered for an introductory astronomy course at the community college. I bought a comfortable bicycle and began taking short rides around my neighborhood, gradually increasing the distance as my confidence and fitness improved. I unearthed my old manuscript from the attic, reading it with both nostalgia and a critical eye, making notes about how it might be revised and completed. I also met with Eleanor about the curriculum development position, accepting it with a confidence that surprised us both. It would mean fewer classroom hours, but greater influence on educational practices throughout the district. A new challenge that both intimidated and excited me. Most importantly, I began reconnecting with friends I'd neglected over the years, women whose invitations I'd declined too often because Emma's needs took precedence. I joined a monthly book club, attended a pottery workshop, accepted an invitation to a weekend hiking trip I would have automatically refused in the past. Each step was small, but together they formed a path toward reclaiming parts of myself that had been dormant for decades. I wasn't becoming someone new. I was remembering someone I'd once been and integrating her strengths and passions into who I was now. Through it all, I maintained my distance from Emma, respecting the boundaries she'd established. Tyler texted occasionally with updates. Emma was healthy. The baby was growing well. The nursery remained untouched since my visit. I didn't press for more information or attempt to insert myself where I wasn't welcome. This journey was for me first, with the hope that it might eventually help rebuild my relationship with my daughter. 3 weeks after my conversation with Robert, I received a text from an unexpected source, Melissa, Tyler's mother. Patricia, I wonder if we might meet for tea tomorrow. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. The formal language and unexpected outreach left me wary but curious. I agreed to meet her at an upscale tea room near her country club. Melissa was already seated when I arrived, impeccably dressed in a pale blue suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She was the epitome of the wealthy, polished grandmother I could never be. Yet as I approached, I noticed something surprising. Uncertainty in her expression, a vulnerability I'd never associated with this confident woman. "Patricia," she stood to greet me, offering a manicured hand. "Thank you for coming." I wasn't. "Sure you would." "I was intrigued by your invitation," I said honestly, taking the seat across from her. A waitress immediately appeared to pour tea into delicate china cups. Once we were alone again, Melissa spoke directly. "I owe you an apology," she said, surprising me with her bluntness. "I've behaved poorly, and it's time I acknowledged that." I remained silent, giving her space to continue. "I've always envied your relationship with Emma," she admitted, stirring. "Her tea with precise movements. The closeness you share, the history. Tyler is my only child, and while we love each other, we've never had the emotional intimacy you and Emma developed." She met my eyes directly. "When Emma married Tyler, I saw an opportunity to create the mother-daughter relationship I'd always wanted. And when the pregnancy was announced, I pushed my way in, believing I could become the maternal figure Emma would turn to." The honest vulnerability in her confession disarmed me. "You didn't need to push me out to create your own relationship with Emma," I said quietly. "I know that now," Melissa nodded, "but insecurity makes people behave badly. I saw your confidence as a mother, your easy understanding of Emma's needs and thoughts, and I felt inadequate in comparison. So I used the advantages I had, money, connections, social influence, to create a role for myself in Emma's life and her child's future." I sipped my tea, considering her words. "What changed? Why are you telling me this now?" Melissa placed her cup carefully back in its saucer. "Tyler came to see me 3 days ago. He told me Emma's been crying every night, that she hates the nursery I created, that she misses you desperately, but doesn't know how to bridge the gap that's formed." She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from the tablecloth. "He also told me about the nursery you created in your garage apartment. He described it in detail. The stars on the ceiling, the handmade mobile, the books you'd collected, the rocking chair that's been in your family for generations." I felt a flicker of surprise that Tyler had visited my nursery without telling me, but it made sense that he would want to see it for himself. "The nursery I designed cost over $20,000, Melissa continued. "It's been photographed for a home design magazine. It's aesthetically perfect." She looked down at her hands. "And it has absolutely no heart, no connection to Emma's childhood, no personal touches, nothing that speaks to the kind of mother she wants to be." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "The kind of mother you were to her." The acknowledgement, from this woman who had seemed determined to erase me from Emma's life, was powerfully validating. But I wasn't interested in validation anymore. I wanted healing for my daughter. "What do you suggest we do?" I asked simply. Melissa reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope, sliding it across the table. "This is an invitation to a small gathering at our country club this Saturday. Officially, it's a luncheon to celebrate Emma's last trimester. Unofficially," she hesitated, "it's an opportunity for reconciliation. Emma doesn't know you're invited. She doesn't even know the event is happening yet, but Tyler and I agree. It's time to end this estrangement before the baby arrives." I studied the elegant cream envelope without touching it. Surprising Emma might not be the best approach. She's made her wishes clear regarding my involvement in her pregnancy. She's made her wishes clear while under immense pressure and influence, Melissa corrected gently. "Some of it from me, I admit, but she's not being true to herself or fair to you." She pushed the envelope closer. "Give her the chance to make things right, Patricia. I've realized I don't need to replace you to have a relationship with Emma and her child. There's room for both of us in their lives." I finally took the envelope, but didn't open it. "Why the change of heart, Melissa?" "Really?" She smiled sadly. "I visited Emma yesterday and found her in the nursery, sitting on the floor surrounded by old photographs, mostly of you and her. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. When I finally got her to tell me what was wrong, she said, "I've ruined everything with Mom, and now my baby won't know the most wonderful grandmother in the world." Melissa's voice softened. That's when I realized what I'd done, not just to you, but to Emma and her child. My insecurity was robbing all of you of something precious. As I drove home from the tea room, the invitation on the passenger seat beside me, I felt something I hadn't expected. Compassion for Melissa. She wasn't a villain, just a woman with her own insecurities and unfulfilled needs. Understanding this didn't erase the hurt of the past months, but it contextualized it in a way that made forgiveness possible. At home, I sat at my kitchen table and opened the invitation. The luncheon was scheduled for noon on Saturday at the Willowbrook Country Club, just 3 days away. I needed to decide quickly whether to attend, whether to risk rejection again, for the chance at reconciliation. As I contemplated my options, my phone rang. It was Tyler. "Did you meet with my mother?" he asked without preamble. "Yes," I confirmed. "She gave me the invitation to Saturday's luncheon. Are you going to come?" The hope in his voice was palpable. I hesitated. "I'm not sure, Tyler. Surprising Emma might backfire. She's made it clear she doesn't want me involved right now." "Patricia," his voice was urgent, "Emma misses you terribly. She's just trapped in this situation she doesn't know how to escape. My mother has acknowledged her part in it. Now we just need to create an opportunity for Emma to find her way back to you without losing face." His analysis made sense, but fear still gnawed at me. What if she rejects me again, in front of everyone? "She won't," Tyler said with confidence. "Trust me on this. I know my wife. She's been looking at old photo albums every night, telling the baby stories about you, about her childhood. Yesterday I found her trying to recreate a blanket you made for her when she was little." His voice softened. "She needs you, Patricia. She's just afraid to admit it after everything that's happened." After we hung up, I stood and walked to the window, looking out at my small garden where spring flowers were blooming in riotous color. The daffodils Emma and I had planted together years ago had multiplied, creating a golden carpet that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. Life continuing, expanding, thriving despite neglect and changing seasons. Perhaps relationships could do the same. I made my decision. I would attend the luncheon, not with expectations or demands, but with an open heart and the willingness to build something new with my daughter. And I would bring a gift, something that represented both my respect for her autonomy and my enduring love. That evening, I returned to the nursery in my converted garage. I looked at it with fresh eyes, not as a substitute for the nursery in Emma's home, or as a statement about my superior understanding of what my grandchild needed. Instead, I saw it as a gift of love, a space created from my heart without expectation, of gratitude or recognition. I carefully removed the mobile I'd commissioned, delicate wooden stars and clouds that spun gently while playing the lullaby I'd sung to Emma throughout her childhood. I wrapped it carefully in tissue paper, then placed it in a simple box tied with a ribbon. This would be my offering, not a demand to be included, not a criticism of the designer nursery, just a piece of our shared history that Emma could incorporate into her child's life if she chose to. The next 2 days passed in a blur of nervous anticipation. I found myself cycling through emotions: hope, fear, determination, doubt. I tried on and discarded multiple outfits, wanting to look nice without appearing to try too hard. I rehearsed what I might say, then reminded myself that authentic emotion would serve better than rehearsed speeches. Saturday morning dawned clear and warm, a perfect spring day. I dressed in a simple floral dress, colorful but not flashy, comfortable but still appropriate for a country club luncheon. I applied minimal makeup, pulled my silver-streaked hair into a neat twist, and added small pearl earrings that had been a gift from my mother when Emma was born. As I prepared to leave, I stood for a moment in front of the hallway mirror, studying my reflection. I saw a woman who had been shaped by motherhood, but not defined solely by it. A woman who had known profound love and painful rejection, yet remained open to reconciliation. A woman who had rediscovered parts of herself that had been dormant, but never truly lost. "You can do this," I told my reflection. "Whatever happens, you'll be okay." The drive to Willowbrook Country Club felt both endless and too short. I parked in the visitors section, checking my appearance one last time in the rearview mirror, before gathering my gift and purse. The building was imposing, old money architecture with columns and perfectly manicured grounds. I felt out of place immediately, but reminded myself that this wasn't about fitting into Melissa's world. It was about reconnecting with my daughter. At the entrance, a uniformed attendant checked my name against a list, then directed me to a private dining room overlooking the golf course. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it as I approached the open double doors. Inside, I could see about 20 women seated at round tables decorated with spring flowers. Melissa stood near the entrance, elegant in a pale green suit, greeting guests as they arrived. She spotted me immediately, her expression shifting from practiced social smile to something more genuine. "Patricia," she said, stepping forward to take my hands. "I'm so glad you came." "Thank you for inviting me," I replied, genuinely grateful for her gesture of reconciliation. "Emma's at the table near the windows," Melissa said quietly. "She doesn't know you're coming. Tyler thought it would be better that way. No time for her to build up anxiety or create excuses." I nodded, taking a deep breath to steady myself. "Where would you like me to sit?" "Next to Emma," Melissa said firmly. "Where you belong." With that, she gently guided me into the room, one hand lightly on my elbow. Conversations continued around us as we moved through the tables, but I was aware of curious glances, of whispers, behind discreetly raised hands. These were Melissa's friends, women who had likely heard one-sided stories about the overbearing mother who had been excluded from the baby shower. I kept my head high, focusing on the table ahead where I could see the back of my daughter's head. Emma was seated facing the windows, her profile silhouetted against the bright spring light. Her pregnancy had progressed significantly since I'd last seen her, her belly now a prominent curve beneath her blue maternity dress. She was nodding at something the woman across from her was saying, one hand resting protectively on her abdomen in that instinctive gesture of motherhood that made my heart clench with recognition and love. We were almost at the table when Emma turned, perhaps sensing our approach. Her eyes widened, her lips parting in surprise as she registered my presence. For a terrible moment, I feared rejection, a public humiliation that would be the final chapter in our estrangement. But then, to my astonishment, tears filled her eyes, and she struggled to stand, one hand braced against the table for support. "Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the ambient conversation in the room. "You're here?" "I was invited," I said simply, unable to find more eloquent words in the emotional moment. Emma looked from me to Melissa, confusion evident in her expression. Melissa stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "I've made many mistakes these past months, dear. Helping to separate you from your mother is perhaps the greatest. It's time to heal this rift before your child arrives." With that, Melissa squeezed Emma's shoulder once, then gracefully withdrew to greet other guests, leaving us facing each other in a bubble of uncertain emotion. Around us, conversations continued, though I was peripherally aware of curious glances in our direction. "I don't understand," Emma said, remaining standing despite her evident discomfort. "You're here? Together? You and Melissa?" "We've come to an understanding," I said softly. We both love you, Emma, and we both want to be part of your child's life. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Emma's hand went to her mouth, tears spilling over. Mom, I've been so awful to you. I don't even know how to begin to apologize. I set my gift on the table and stepped forward, closing the distance between us. You don't need to apologize right now. We can talk about everything later, privately. For now, can I just hug my daughter? I've missed you so much. Emma nodded, a sob escaping as she moved into my embrace. I held her carefully, mindful of her, pregnant belly between us, feeling the familiar shape of her shoulders under my hands. She smelled the same, that indefinable scent that had comforted me through sleepless nights and childhood illnesses, through teenage dramas and college departures. My daughter. Despite everything, still my daughter. I've missed you too, Mom, she whispered against my shoulder. So much. I don't know what I was thinking pushing you away. I was so confused, so afraid. Shh, I soothed, just as I had when she was small and woke from nightmares. We'll figure it all out. We have time. Around us, the room had quieted somewhat, guests trying to pretend they weren't watching our reunion while clearly fascinated by the unfolding drama. I gently guided Emma back to her seat, taking the empty chair beside her that had perhaps been strategically left vacant by Melissa. We're causing a scene, Emma whispered, wiping at her tears with a linen napkin. Let them watch, I said, surprising myself with the confidence in my voice. They're seeing what real love looks like, messy, imperfect, but enduring. Emma gave a watery laugh. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise, I said, with a small smile. You just stopped listening for a while. She reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. I'm listening now, Mom. I promise. The luncheon continued around us, but Emma and I existed in our own bubble of reconnection. We spoke quietly about safe topics, her health, the baby's recent ultrasound, the spring weather, saving deeper conversations for a more private setting. Occasionally, Melissa would stop by our table, making sure we had everything we needed, her manner warm but not intrusive. I could see her making a genuine effort to step back, to allow Emma and me space to rebuild our connection. As dessert was being served, delicate lemon tarts with fresh berries. Emma noticed the wrapped package I'd placed on the table. What's this? She asked, touching the simple ribbon with curious fingers. A small gift, I explained. For the baby, but you don't need to open it now. I want to, she said, already untying the ribbon with the eagerness I remembered from childhood birthdays. She carefully removed the tissue paper, then grew still as she revealed the mobile of stars and clouds, her fingers tracing the delicate wooden shapes with reverence. It plays your lullaby, I said softly. The one my mother sang to me, that I sang to you. Emma wound the small key at the top, and the gentle melody filled our corner of the room as the stars slowly rotated. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. It's perfect, she whispered. Exactly what I've been wanting for the nursery. The word nursery hung between us, laden with unspoken tension, the designer showcase that Emma hated but hadn't been able to reject. Tyler told me about the nursery, I said carefully. About how it's not what you really wanted. Emma looked down, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. It's beautiful, objectively. Melissa spent so much money, brought in this famous designer. I should be grateful. But it doesn't feel like you, I finished for her. It doesn't feel like a place where you can be the mother you want to be. She looked up, surprise evident in her expression. Yes, exactly. How did you… Tyler showed me your sketches, Emma. The ones in your office drawer. The nursery you really wanted to create. Her blush deepened. You weren't supposed to see those. No one was. Why not? I asked gently. They're beautiful. They show such thoughtfulness, such love for your baby. They're simple, she said, defensive now. Nothing like the sophisticated nursery Melissa created. They're authentic, I corrected. They reflect your heart, your values, your vision of motherhood. That's worth more than any designer showcase. Emma's fingers traced the spinning stars of the mobile, her expression thoughtful. I don't know how to undo what's been done, she admitted. The nursery is finished. It's being featured in a magazine next month. Melissa has already invited friends to see it. It would hurt her feelings if I changed it now. I considered my words carefully, not wanting to criticize Melissa when she'd made such a meaningful step toward reconciliation. What if you didn't? Have to choose? What if there could be 2 nurseries? Emma looked confused. 2? The showcase can remain as is, for the magazine spread, for visitors, for when you need a perfectly appointed space. But you could create a second space somewhere else in your home. A smaller, cozier room that reflects your heart. A place for midnight feedings and quiet moments, for the kind of mothering that doesn't need to be photographed to be valuable. Hope flickered in Emma's eyes. We do have that small room off the master bedroom. It was supposed to be a home office, but we never really use it. It has that nice window seat. She trailed off, clearly envisioning possibilities. Think about it, I suggested. Talk to Tyler. See what feels right for both of you. She nodded, carefully rewrapping the mobile. I will. And Mom. She hesitated. Would you help me? If we decide to create this second space? The invitation, to participate in preparing for my grandchild, to share my perspective without imposing it, filled me with quiet joy. I'd be honored, I said simply. As the luncheon wound down and guests began to depart, Emma and I made plans to meet the following day at her house. The conversation wasn't deep. We were both aware of the public setting, of the need to proceed carefully with our fragile reconciliation, but it was genuine, a tentative bridge being rebuilt between us. When it was time to leave, Emma hugged me tightly. Thank you for coming today, she whispered, for being willing to try again with me after how I've treated you. You're my daughter, I said, the simple truth more powerful than any elaborate declaration. That doesn't change, even when things are difficult between us. As I drove home, emotions swirled through me like leaves in an autumn wind. Relief, hope, lingering hurt, cautious optimism. The reconciliation had begun, but I knew we had significant work ahead to truly heal the breach between us. There were conversations we needed to have, painful truths to acknowledge on both sides. But for the first time in months, I believed we would find our way through to something new, not the uncomplicated closeness of her childhood, but a more mature relationship between 2 women who loved each other deeply, but were learning to respect each other's boundaries and differences. The next day, I arrived at Emma and Tyler's house with a small plant. Not a baby gift, but a simple offering of continued growth. Tyler answered the door, his relief at seeing me evident in his warm smile and the enthusiastic hug he offered. Thank you, he whispered as he embraced me, for giving this another chance. Emma was waiting in the living room, looking both nervous and eager. She'd arranged tea and homemade cookies, my recipe, I noted with a bittersweet pang, on E. The coffee table. I thought we could talk here first, she explained. Before we go upstairs. I understood immediately that she wanted to have our difficult conversation before showing me the designer nursery or discussing the possibility of creating a second, more personal space. I settled onto the sofa, accepting the cup of tea she offered with hands that trembled slightly. I don't know where to start, Emma admitted after an awkward silence. How about with the truth? I suggested gently. No matter how painful it might be. She nodded, taking a deep breath. The truth is, I've been terrified of becoming a mother. Not because I don't want this baby. I do, desperately. But because I'm afraid of losing myself the way She hesitated. The way you think I lost myself in motherhood, I finished. For her. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I love you so much, Mom, and I know you sacrificed everything for me. But watching you put your entire life on hold, give up your dreams, center your whole existence around me, it scared me. I don't want my child to feel the burden of being someone's entire reason for living. I don't want to disappear into motherhood, the way you did. The words hurt, but they also rang with truth I couldn't deny. You're right, I said quietly. I did lose myself in mothering you. After your father left, you became my whole world. That wasn't fair to either of us. Emma looked surprised by my ready agreement. You're not angry that I feel this way? How could I be? You're articulating fears based on what you observed throughout your childhood. Those observations are valid, even if they're painful for me to hear. I set my tea down, leaning forward to meet her eyes directly. But Emma, you need to understand something important. My choices were just that. Choices. They weren't inevitable. They weren't the only way to be a good mother. What do you mean? I mean that you don't have to repeat my pattern to be a wonderful mother. You can maintain your identity, your passions, your sense of self separate from your child. In fact, that might make you an even better mother, showing your little one that women can be both nurturing parents and whole, complex people with dreams of their own. Emma absorbed this, her hand resting on her rounded belly as if drawing strength from the child within. But how do you know I can do that? What if I get lost anyway? What if motherhood consumes me the way it did you? Because you're already aware of the possibility in a way I never was, I explained. And because you have something I didn't, a supportive partner who's fully engaged, extended family who can help, financial security that gives you options. I was alone, Emma. That's a big part of why motherhood became my entire identity. There was no one else to share the load. I never thought about it that way, Emma admitted. I've been so focused on not repeating what I saw as your mistakes that I didn't consider how different our circumstances are. And, I added gently, you have me, not to take over or impose my vision, but to support you, to give you breaks when you need them, to remind you to nurture yourself as well as your child. If you're still willing, after how I've treated you, Emma said, her voice breaking. Mom, I'm so sorry. For excluding you from the baby shower. For letting Melissa push you aside. For not standing up for our relationship. I understand why it happened, I said. You were trying to create distance from a model of motherhood that frightened you. And Melissa offered an alternative, a more detached, polished approach that seemed safer. But it's not me, Emma said firmly. The country club gatherings, the designer nursery, the focus on appearances, none of that reflects who I want to be as a mother. I got caught up in it because it seemed like protection against losing myself the way I feared. And what kind of mother do you want to be? I asked, genuinely curious about her vision now that we were speaking honestly. Emma's expression softened, her eyes taking on a dreamy quality. I want to be present but not smothering, loving but not consuming. I want to read stories in silly voices and bake birthday cakes from scratch, but I also want to maintain my career, my friendships, my marriage. She looked at me directly. I want to learn from both you and Melissa, taking your warmth and creativity, her boundaries and self-care, creating my own approach that honors my child without erasing myself. Pride swelled within me, not because Emma wanted to emulate parts of my mothering, but because she was thoughtfully crafting her own path, considering multiple perspectives, refusing to accept false dichotomies between being a devoted mother and a complete person. That sounds like exactly the right approach, I told her. And for what it's worth, I think you're going to be an extraordinary mother. Even though I'm terrified? She asked with a small smile. Especially because you're terrified, I assured her. Fear means you care deeply about doing this well. It's the mothers who aren't afraid at all who worry me. We both laughed, the tension that had surrounded us for months finally beginning to dissolve. Tyler, who had tactfully made himself scarce during our conversation, rejoined us, his relief at our reconciliation evident in his relaxed posture and easy smile. "Should we show your mom the nursery?" he suggested. "Both the magazine version and the room we're considering for the alternative space?" Emma nodded, reaching for my hand as she leveraged herself off the sofa with the slightly awkward movements of late pregnancy. "I want your honest opinion, Mom, but please be gentle about Melissa's creation. She really did mean well." The designer nursery was exactly as Tyler had described, aesthetically perfect but emotionally sterile. Everything matched in sophisticated shades of gray and white, from the imported crib to the custom draperies. It was a space designed to impress visitors rather than nurture a child. "It's very elegant," I said diplomatically, noting how Emma stood in the doorway rather than entering, her body language revealing her discomfort with the space that was supposed to be her sanctuary as a new mother. "It's cold," Emma said flatly, "like a furniture showroom. There's nothing of me in it, nothing of my childhood or my values or my hopes for my baby." She turned away. "Let me show you the other room we're considering." The small room off the master bedroom had been intended as a home office, but was currently serving as overflow storage. Despite the boxes and unused exercise equipment cluttering the space, I could immediately see its potential. Large windows overlooked the garden, filling the room with natural light. A cushioned window seat offered the perfect spot for feeding or reading stories. The proportions were cozy rather than grand, creating a sense of security and warmth. "This could be wonderful," I said, already envisioning possibilities. "Close enough to your bedroom for convenience, but separate enough to feel like its own special space." "That's what I thought," Emma agreed, enthusiasm lighting her face. "We could keep the designer nursery for show, for when Melissa's friends visit or for the magazine feature. But this could be where the real living happens, the 3 a.m. feedings and lullabies and first smiles." "The heart space versus the showcase," Tyler suggested, putting his arm around Emma's shoulders. "Exactly," she nodded. "And Mom, I was hoping. That is, if you're willing. Maybe you could help me design this room. Not doing everything for me, but sharing ideas, working together." The invitation, to collaborate rather than control, to offer perspective without imposing it, felt like the perfect metaphor for our healing relationship. "I'd love that," I said simply. Over the next 3 weeks, Emma and I worked together to transform the small room into a nursery that reflected her heart. We kept the project secret from Melissa at first, not out of deception, but to give Emma space to explore her own vision without influence. We repurposed furniture I'd stored in my attic, the rocking chair that had held 3 generations of my family, a small bookshelf my father had built when Emma was born, a comfortable side table perfect for holding midnight bottles or nursing. Supplies. Emma selected wall colors, a soft yellow that reminded her of the daffodils we'd planted together years ago. And we spent a weekend painting together, laughing as we got more paint on ourselves than seemed possible. Tyler installed simple shelves where Emma arranged treasured books from her own childhood, alongside new stories she'd selected for her baby. I brought over items from the nursery I'd created in my converted garage, not to replace what Emma was building, but to supplement it. The star-patterned rug found a home beneath the rocking chair. The cloud-shaped nightlight was installed near the changing table. The collection of classic children's books filled gaps in the growing library. What emerged was a space that honored both past and future, incorporating elements of Emma's childhood while creating something new that reflected her own vision of motherhood. It wasn't perfect in the way the designer nursery was perfect, but it was authentic, filled with love and thoughtfulness and personal meaning. As we worked, Emma and I continued our healing conversations. Sometimes while painting or assembling, furniture, sometimes over cups of tea in her kitchen, we gradually rebuilt our relationship on more honest foundations. "I've been watching you these past weeks," Emma said one afternoon as we arranged stuffed animals in a vintage toy chest I'd refinished. "You're different somehow. More. I don't know. Vibrant?" I smiled, realizing she'd noticed the changes I'd been making in my own life. "I've been reclaiming parts of myself I set aside during your childhood," I explained. "Taking an astronomy class at the community college, riding a bicycle again, working on that children's book I started before you were born." "Really?" Emma looked up with interest. "The one about the girl who could talk to trees? I remember you telling me about that when I was little. I always wished you'd finished it so I could read it." "It's nowhere near finished," I admitted. "But I'm working on it again, and I've accepted a curriculum development position at school. Fewer classroom hours, but more influence on educational practices across the district." Emma sat back on her heels, studying me with new eyes. "You're expanding your life, not just focusing on being my mother or a future grandmother." "Exactly," I nodded. "Not because I love you any less or am any less excited about this baby, but because I've realized I can be a wonderful mother and grandmother while also being a whole person with my own dreams and interests. That's what I want to," Emma said softly, her hand resting on her belly. "To love this baby completely without disappearing completely. And you will," I assured her. "Because you're conscious of the balance in a way I never was, and because you have support I didn't have, Tyler, me, even Melissa in her own way." Speaking of Melissa, the day finally came when we needed to share our secret project with her. Emma was nervous, fearing her mother-in-law would be hurt or offended by the creation of this alternative nursery that implicitly criticized her designer showcase. "Would you come with me when I show her?" Emma asked. "Not to gang up on her, but to help explain that this isn't about rejecting her contribution." "Of course," I agreed, though privately I wondered how Melissa would react to this challenge, to her vision. We invited her for tea, and after some general conversation, Emma took a deep breath and explained about the second nursery. "It's not that I don't appreciate everything you've done, Melissa," she said carefully. "The main nursery is beautiful, perfect for the magazine feature and for showing to your friends. But Tyler and I wanted a smaller, more personal space for the everyday moments, something that reflects more of our childhoods and personalities." Melissa was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, to my surprise, she smiled. "May I see it?" Emma led us upstairs, her nervous energy evident in her rapid speech as she pointed out features of the room, the yellow walls, the window seat, the rocking chair with its generational history. Melissa moved slowly through the space, taking everything in without comment. Finally, she turned to face us. "This," she said quietly, "is a room filled with love. It's beautiful in a way my designer nursery will never be." Emma's relief was palpable. "You're not upset?" "My dear," Melissa said, reaching for Emma's hands, "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past weeks about what truly matters, about the kind of grandmother I want to be, and I've realized that perfect appearances mean far less than genuine connection." She glanced at me, her expression softening. "Patricia has been teaching me that, though perhaps not intentionally." I smiled, recognizing the gracious acknowledgement for what it was, a continuation of our tentative truce, an extension of mutual respect. "The baby will need both spaces," Melissa continued, "the beautiful showcase that presents a perfect image to the world, and this heart-centered room where real living happens. Much like children need both types of grandmothers, one who can provide social connections and material advantages, and one who offers emotional wisdom and creative nurturing." The generosity of her framing, finding value in both our contributions rather than positioning us as competitors, moved me deeply. The baby is fortunate to have both, I agreed. As is Emma, Melissa added, surprising me further. She turned to her daughter-in-law with genuine warmth. You were right to create this space, to honor your vision of motherhood. I'm sorry if I've been overwhelming in my enthusiasm. You've been excited about becoming a grandmother, Emma said kindly. We all have been. We're just finding our way forward together. As if responding to this moment of harmony, Emma suddenly gasped, her hand going to her belly. Someone's very active today, she laughed, reaching for my hand and placing it where the baby was kicking vigorously. The sensation of my grandchild moving beneath my palm filled me with wonder. Life continuing, family expanding, love multiplying rather than dividing. Without thinking, I reached for Melissa's hand and guided it alongside mine. Her surprise gave way to delight as she felt the baby's movements. Well, hello there, little one, she murmured. Your grandmothers are both here, feeling you dance. In that moment, with 3 generations of hands connected over the promise of a 4th, I understood something profound. Family isn't a zero-sum game. Love expands to include new members, new relationships, new ways of connecting. Emma didn't have to choose between Melissa's influence and mine, between her father's presence in her life and my own, between honoring her past and creating her future. She could integrate all these elements into something uniquely her own. 2 weeks later, Emma went into labor 3 days before her due date. Tyler called me at 2 in the morning, his voice a mixture of excitement and panic. It's happening, he said simply. Can you come to the hospital? Emma's asking for you. I dressed quickly and drove through empty streets, my heart racing with anticipation and joy. At the hospital, I found Emma already in active labor, her face flushed and determined as she worked through contractions. She reached for my hand when I entered the room. Mom, she breathed between pains. You're here. Of course I'm here, I said, squeezing her fingers gently. Wherever you want me to be, that's where I'll be. The labor progressed rapidly, and by dawn, Emma was fully dilated and ready to push. The delivery room was calm, but charged with expectation. Tyler supporting Emma on one side, me on the other, both of us offering encouragement as she brought her child into the world with strength and focus I couldn't help but admire. When the baby finally emerged, a girl with a shock of dark hair and a lusty cry, time seemed to stand still. Emma's exhausted face transformed with a joy so pure it brought tears to my eyes. Tyler cut the cord with trembling hands, his expression a mixture of awe and adoration as the nurse placed their daughter on Emma's chest. She's perfect, Emma whispered, tracing tiny features with gentle fingers. Absolutely perfect. After initial checks and measurements, as the new family bonded in those precious first hours, Emma looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. Mom, I want you to meet your granddaughter, Lily Patricia Calloway. The middle name, my own, now carried forward to this new generation, was an unexpected gift that nearly undid my careful composure. Lily, I repeated, my voice catching. She's beautiful, Emma, just like her mother. Would you like to hold her? Emma asked, already lifting the tiny bundle toward me. As I took my granddaughter in my arms for the first time, feeling her solid warmth and marveling at the perfection of her miniature features, I was filled with a love both familiar and entirely new. This wasn't the all-consuming devotion of a mother, with its weight of responsibility and fear. This was a grandmother's love, deep but unburdened, passionate but peaceful, committed but free of the need to control. Looking down at Lily's sleeping face, I made a silent promise. I would love her unconditionally, but not overwhelmingly. I would support Emma's motherhood without attempting to direct it. I would offer wisdom when asked, but step back when not needed. I would be fully present in my granddaughter's life while maintaining the fullness of my own. Later that day, as Emma rested and Tyler made necessary phone calls, I sat in the hospital room's comfortable chair, Lily sleeping peacefully in my arms. I thought about the journey that had brought us here, the painful exclusion, the difficult conversations, the gradual healing. None of it had been easy, but all of it had been necessary to bring us to this new understanding, this more mature relationship between mother and daughter, this balanced vision of what family could be. Melissa arrived in the afternoon, bearing an extravagant arrangement of flowers and a cashmere baby blanket from an exclusive boutique. If she was surprised to find me already there, already comfortable in my grandmother role, she didn't show it. Instead, she greeted me warmly before approaching the bed where Emma now held Lily. "May I?" she asked softly, extending her arms. Emma smiled, carefully transferring her daughter to Melissa's waiting embrace. "Meet your other grandmother, Lily," she said. "She's been waiting for you, too." I watched as Melissa's polished exterior melted in the face of this tiny new life, her eyes filling with tears as she whispered endearments and promises. In that moment, I felt no jealousy, no competition, only appreciation for the additional love surrounding my granddaughter. Lily would benefit from both our influences, Melissa's sophistication and social graces, my creativity and emotional openness. She would have what Emma had missed, a complete circle of family, offering different gifts but united in love. That evening, as visiting hours came to a close, Emma caught my hand as I prepared to leave. "Mom," she said quietly, "thank you for not giving up on me, even when I pushed you away. Thank you for fighting for our relationship. Some bonds can bend without breaking," I told her, kissing her forehead gently. "The love between mothers and daughters is one of them." As I drove home through the quiet evening streets, I found myself humming the lullaby my mother had sung to me, that I had sung to Emma, that would now be sung to Lily. The melody carried through generations, changing slightly with each voice, but remaining recognizable, beloved, a thread connecting past to present to future. I thought of the nursery waiting at Emma and Tyler's home, both the designer showcase and the heart-centered space we had created together. Lily would need both, just as she would need both her grandmothers, just as Emma had needed to find her own path to motherhood that honored her past while creating her future. And I would need both as well. My identity as Emma's mother and Lily's grandmother alongside my rediscovered passions, my new professional challenges, my expanding sense of self. Not either or, but both, and not division, but multiplication, not loss, but transformation. In the darkness of my car, I smiled. The journey had been painful, but it had led us all exactly where we needed to be. Not back to what was, but forward to something new and better. Something honest, something whole, something that honored the complexity of love across generations. The stars emerged overhead as I drove. The same stars that decorated Lily's nursery. The same stars I was learning about in my astronomy class. The same stars that had witnessed the love story of our family across decades. Constant yet ever-changing, separate yet connected, exactly as we were meant to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.